protocol. So the validation based protocol is also known as optimistic concurrency control technique, right? So the other name is going to be optimistic concurrency control technique. So in the case of validation protocol, we have three phases. So the first phase is a read phase. So in this phase, the transaction TI is read and executed. It is used to read the values of various data items, right? The transaction reads the values of various data items and store them in temporary local variables, right? So we are going to read the value of various data items that are needed by the transaction, and we are going to store it in local variables. We are going to check whether this temporary values does not conflict with one another, right? To check the values of the temporary local variables, we go for this validation phase. So in this phase, the temporary values will be validated against the actual data to check whether it violates serializability, right? So initially, whenever you want transaction wants to do with your data item, it performs only with some temporary variables instead of actually writing the values. It stores the values in a temporary variables, and in the validation phase, the temporary values will be validated against the actual data to see if it violates the serializability. If the validation of that transaction is validated and the otherwise the transaction is rolled back, right? So whenever you want to write something to the database, what you do is that initially you are going to write it into the temporary variables, and then you validate the temporary variable values, check it for serializability, whether this values will not conflict with one another, right? And only if the validation is successful, right? So whenever you are going to update something, the values of the database variables, it will not conflict, or they can be executed concurrently without any deadlock. Then only you are going to copy the temporary results onto the database system, right? Whereas if there exists some conflicts between the new values with the old values, then it is being rolled back, right? So in the case of validation based protocol, we have this three phases. We have some different timestamp. So start of TI, it denotes that their transaction TI has started its execution, and validation of TI, it means that the TI transaction TI has completed its read operation and started its validation phase. And finish of TI means that a transaction TI has completed its write operation, right? So here, whenever some variables have to be updated, initially they are being read. In the read phase, you are going to validate whether this new values of the variables affects the serializability. So if they are going to affect the serializability and there will be some deadlock or concurrent access anomaly, you will be rolling back the old value, rolling back to the old values. Else, if the new values are validated and they pass the serializability test, it will be written into the database system, right? So this is about validation based protocol, right?